So good to see every single one of you. Welcome to those watching online around Acadiana, around the country, and around the world. We're so happy that you joined us. This is part 2 of our Legacy series, and we'll walk you through really what this actually means. Well, usually around January, I'll usually get a new Bible just to kind of help me as I'm starting to read through the Bible again. And there's one thing that I do with every new Bible that I get. I write the same thing on the fly leaf every single Bible that I have. And you could see all my old Bibles. I take it out before I read anything. I write a poem that I picked up from a convict in prison from 500 years ago, and I write this short poem in every one of my Bibles. Let me read it to you from this convict's poem. This is what he said. There was a man, and they called him mad. The more he gave, the more he had. It's from John Bunyan, who wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, who was put in prison for his faith and wrote this poem. Think about those words again. The more he gave, the more he had. Almost sounds like a contradiction. In fact, if we didn't know kingdom principles, it would be a contradiction. The more he gave, the more he had. But that's really sometimes even what internationals face when they're learning even the English language. They say the English language is one of the hardest languages to work with and to learn because of all the contradictions of words that just doesn't make sense to them, just kind of the more he gave, the more he had part. In the English language, it's from verb tenses to just words that don't seem to connect together. Like a ship carries cargo, but a car carries shipments. Doesn't seem to make much sense. You park on a driveway, but you drive on a what? Parkway. Or how about this one? Why does your nose run and your feet smell? Okay, think about that just for a second. Why does your nose run and your feet smell? The part I don't get is we've got people here that work in finance. Why do they call the guy that invests all your money a broker? I just don't understand that and really don't want to invest my money in a person like that. Or my favorite one is, think of all those that are in the medical field here. Why do they call doctors, they call it their practice? Shouldn't it be good by now with all the people that they're coming? I'm not going to anybody's practice. I need you to be a professional. It just doesn't seem to make sense. There's no egg. There's no egg in eggplant, there's no ham in hamburger, and there's neither pine nor apples in pineapples. So it really can mess up the whole English. It almost seems contradictory, it doesn't even seem to go together. And then my favorite conundrums, this means absolutely nothing, and it's not even going to enrich your life, but I want to read them to you anyway. Why do pizzas come in square boxes? If they're psychics, why can't they predict the winning lottery numbers and win the 1.6 billion? How come the number 2 pencil is the most popular and still called number 2? How come there aren't B batteries? You have A, C, and D. And the most mysterious conundrum is why women can't put mascara on with their mouth closed. This is an absolute conundrum that we cannot figure out and need a miracle to get the answer to that. It's the way it goes. Jesus faced something like this. Jesus faced the contradiction. In fact, it seemed to, here's what's crazy. Jesus and his disciples see the same thing at the same time, and literally the way they define it become contradictory. It becomes so far apart that you're going, it almost had the eggplant and the pineapple in it. You're going, man, you see the same thing, you notice the same thing, but it doesn't match up on how you define this. Just like those crazy words, parkways and driveways. How did you define it which so far, that the definition is so far apart? And Jesus faced this just before he was to go to the cross and die for us. And literally, him and his disciples in the same situation, the same place, and they see things totally differently, the contradiction. Let me read you the story. It's in Matthew 26, and this is what it says. Jesus now proceeded to Bethany, to the home of Simon the leper, and while he was eating, a woman came with a bottle of very expensive perfume and poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant and said, "What a waste of good money. Why? She could have sold it for a fortune and given it to the poor. Verse 10 says, and Jesus knew what they were thinking and said, why are you criticizing her? For she has done a good thing to me. You will always have the poor among you, but you won't always have me. She poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial, and she will always be remembered for this deed. The story of what she has done will be told throughout the whole world whenever the good news is preached. And can I just tell you, just to make sure you understand what Jesus said, we are fulfilling prophecy today, talking about this woman's story today. Here's what's crazy. Jesus sees the same thing, interprets it one way, and the disciples see it another way. The two different interpretations, it goes like this. In verse 8, the disciple says, that's a waste. And in verse 10, Jesus says, that's a good thing. My goodness, when I saw those two things really put up next to each other, they see the same thing from the same woman, and look at how far apart, almost contradictory, the definition on the interpretation of this giving act is of this woman. What a waste, or what a good thing. And all I thought was this: how can you be that far apart? How can you be that far apart? Or even I thought it this way: can somebody who has been with Jesus for 3 years still be that far off on something? You've just hung with Jesus, and yet you don't even interpret this thing the correct way. And I even thought to myself, can I be with Jesus for almost now, when I think to myself, over 4 decades I've been with Jesus. Can I be in that boat? Can I literally look at things and not interpret them the way that I'm supposed to interpret them? That's why this is so important when you start to think about those interpretations and ask myself or ask ourselves about, is there contradiction here to the way Jesus sees something and the way we see something? The next 5 weeks are so important in understanding this. This is our legacy series, and I think that same thing can happen here. The same thing can happen even during the legacy series. Let me explain it this way. How exciting was it to say that we are one church, 5 campuses today? New Iberia, was that as exciting? Hey, can I just tell you this? In about 5 months, we're gonna say one church, 6 campuses, which is gonna be exciting for Youngsville and Pastor Chris and Michelle Reese. Well, one of our young pastors asked me a question this week as we were embarking on the legacy series, and we were just kind of talking through and seeing what it all entails. And this is the question that they asked me. They said this. They said, will people begin to interpret this wrong? Will people come to you? Because I just want to make sure I'm ready for the question out in the lobby, and when we shake hands, are they going to go, this church is about money, this is all about money? What do you say to that? I said, I think our senior pastor answered that very aptly at the very end of the message last week. And this is what he asked: how many of you have been born again here at OSC just the last 5 years? I said, did you see the hundreds of people that stood up all day long? I said, some people, listen to this, some people are gonna see it as money, and some are gonna see legacy as changed lives. And it's gonna be determined really on how really you begin to come and define this. See, legacy is such an important word. And I want us to discuss it today, because when we deal with legacy, we're not just dealing with December 2nd, and we're not just dealing with our own lives, but we're dealing with eternity. Because I want to define legacy. Always keep this in mind. When we're dealing with the word legacy, I'm gonna remind all of us, because I need to be reminded of it. Legacy is doing something that outlives you. Always keep that in mind. It's doing something that outlives you. In fact, it's an act of obedience. Talk to a woman in Matthew 26. It's an act of obedience that goes further into the future than you go into the future. It means that when you do this with this kind of generosity that this woman showed, here's what's crazy about this, is that 2,000 years later, we're still talking about her story. We're still talking about what that woman did to Jesus. Just that one act outlived her and began to inspire. Here's what's crazy. Her gift would outlive her, because it almost sounds a little bit legacy-ish, but we are speaking about her story because it inspires us today, even 2,000 years later. And here's what's incredible. We will have a little bit of the same opportunity on December 2nd at all 5 of our campuses, because on December 2nd is we're gonna have the opportunity to do something that literally is going to have legacy to it. Because on December 2nd, somebody gave us, like last year it happened, a different person gave us $2 million and said, we believe in what you're doing. We believe this is not about money, but this is about changed lives. And how many know lives need to be changed in Youngsville? Lives need to be changed in New Iberia. And lives need to be changed all around. And so here's what happened. Someone says, I want to give you $2 million and I want you to match it. And if you can match it on all 5 campuses, your $2 million turns to $4 million. Man, that is exciting to me. Because what happens is then on December 2nd, we do this once a year. This is a brand new thing for us, that we started on December 2nd, or the first Sunday in December, doing a legacy offering to begin to see the kingdom of God expand. We'll take $2 million of that and we'll give it to finish the Opelousas campus, and it will be done. And our goal is literally to do this free and clear. That's what our goal is. And then we want to take money and invest it all in New Iberia to update that campus, which is decades old. And then we want to begin to help Pastor Chris and Michelle begin to start their own campus and send money over there. And we have that opportunity. We have an opportunity to do this with our legacy offering, which can become so exciting. Something that would outlive us, an act of obedience that will go further into the future than we will. Well, how does that work, Pastor Tim? My mind goes back that when the founder of Apple Computer, Steve Jobs, passed away, they started to put on TV one of the old vintage commercials that they used to show in 1997. I mean, it's grainy. If you were to go and look it up, it's grainy, but it is powerful. It's when Steve Jobs, this out-of-the-box thinker in 1997, put Apple on the map. And when he passed away, they started to put this commercial called Think Different. It's an amazing commercial of a collage of pictures and old black and white videos of footage of people who have invented, inspired, created, and sacrificed whatever they could to improve the world. In fact, when you look, you'll see people on there: Bob Dylan, Amelia Earhart, Frank Lloyd Wright, Muhammad Ali, Dr. King, Jim Henson from the Muppets, Albert Einstein, Picasso, and even Gandhi. And as the images are rolling and the footage is rolling, the voiceover is a poem that they start to read. And all I thought about was today. I thought about this woman and I thought about legacy. Let me read to you the poem when they showed this video. It goes like this: here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in square holes, the ones who see things differently, they're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who actually do it. That is powerful. And honestly, when I look at this and read this, I'm starting to realize that the woman in Matthew 26, she's one of the crazy ones. She's one of the misfits, she's one of the rebels, because she was doing things that nobody else would do. Because she took Jesus pretty seriously. In fact, I remember a conversation that took place that somebody said to a friend of mine, "You take this Jesus thing too seriously," to which they responded, "Well, I don't know about that, but I do know this, that Jesus took me pretty seriously when he died for me on the cross." And that really is the truth. This woman in Matthew 26 took Jesus seriously, so seriously that she became one of the crazy ones. But what is it that Jesus saw in this woman's gift? What was it that in this woman's act of obedience that would not only give her legacy, that we would be speaking about it 2 millenniums later, what is it that Jesus saw but the disciples didn't in this woman's gift? I want to just give to you 3 quick things. I want you to jot these down because I think it's going to help us. It's going to help us for legacy December 2nd. It's going to help us for our own lifetime, and I think it's going to help us for eternity. Those 3 things I think are going to be so important. So let me just give to you my take on what I see here, that how they became so far off, but I want to kind of bring it to what Jesus saw. Let me give it to you. Number 1, jot this down. I think that the gift had the extravagance of God on it. Let me say it like this. I think when Jesus saw it, he said, this looks a lot like what my Father does. This looks a lot like what God does. What do you mean by that, Pastor Tim? I love the word extravagance because it's not a word that means wasteful. It's a word that means to spare no expense, no lack of restraint in using your resources. It's to be elaborate. And I want to say this, God is extravagant, but he's not wasteful. God is extravagant, but he's not wasteful. What do you mean, Pastor Tim? I think I could see that when I look at creation. Think about this for a moment. Let's just take creation. When God created, he was extravagant and not stingy. Think of it this way. When God was creating the stars, he could just go, here's a star. He didn't put one star up there and say, look at the star. When the sun goes down, you get one star. He puts 100 billion stars. 100 billion. Come on, folks. It wasn't one star. It was Jesus going, I'm going to create galaxies, 100 billion stars. I'm going to create stars in such a number that if you started counting right now in your life to 100 billion, you can't even do it. You'd be dead before you even get to a billion because of how extravagant God is. How amazing is that? I mean, think about this. Everything he created is with extravagance. Okay, let's take this one. How about insects? Think about this. He spoke and 10 million species of insects were created. 10 million of them, not 100, not 1,000. I mean, how about this? He made 2,500 different variations of ants. Ants, and most of them are in my house. There is 300,000 species of beetles. Beetles. Talk about extravagance. Just in the U.S., there are 5 billion birds in the U.S. Most here, and you guys make that number come down every single year. I know who you are, okay? Just listen close. But it wasn't like just a bird, like going, hey, stick wings on them and let them fly. He is so extravagant with their personalities. Some can fly 500 miles nonstop. There are some, like mallard ducks, that can fly 60 miles an hour. Then you shoot them. And then there's eagles that 100 miles an hour. Then there are falcons 180 miles an hour. Some birds he created to navigate by the stars. There's also over 10,000 species of birds. You ready for this? 28,000 species of fish. That's amazing. There's one fish that doesn't even eat its food in the water. It goes up to the surface, spits at bugs, and makes them fall and eats them. We've got an extravagant God that we serve. Extravagant. You know what creation is? Creation is God opening up the alabaster box and going, I'm not going to spare anything. You get 100 billion stars. You get all the beetles you want. You get all the ants you want. It's God opening up the alabaster box for us. It's God saying this. God saying, I'm not stingy. I'm extravagant. I'm going to spoil you. I was speaking in California a few years back, and when I got to my hotel room, there was a small gift basket. They put a few snacks in there and some bottles of water. But the thing that was so meaningful to me is they left a book there that to this day means something special to me. And the stories in there are absolutely incredible. The name of the book is called In the Heart of the World by Mother Teresa. It's stories that Mother Teresa has given of her journey there right in Calcutta, India, In the Heart of the World by Mother Teresa. And one of my favorite stories is that the seminary in Bangalore, she said, a nun said to me, this is Mother Teresa, she said, a nun once said to me, Mother Teresa, here in Calcutta, you are spoiling the poor. You are spoiling poor people by giving them too many free things. They are losing their human dignity. That's what they told Mother Teresa. Her response, she wrote, when everyone was quiet, I said calmly, no one spoils us as much as God. See the wonderful gifts he has given to us. All of you have no glasses that are talking to me, but yet all of you can see. What if God were to take money for your sight? What would happen? Continually, we're breathing and living on oxygen that you don't work for or pay for. What would happen if God were to say, if you work 4 hours, I'll give you 2 hours of sunshine? How many of us would survive then? There are many congregations that spoil the rich. He says it's good to have one congregation that will spoil the poor in the name of Jesus. How powerful is that? God spoils us because God is extravagant and God gives. That's why I agree with the reformer Martin Luther, who said this, a religion that does nothing, that saves nothing, that gives nothing, that costs nothing, and that suffers nothing is worth nothing. That's what God is able, and that's what God does for us. But the second thing I see on this woman's gift is something really important. I think secondly, now this is the part I want to explain. It was giving with nothing left. This is a challenge to me. I was trying to, I'm gonna kind of work my way through point 2 because this is a challenge to me. And see, it was common for people to pour perfume on guests and travelers that came to your house because of the dusty roads and the environment that you lived in. You're walking, everything is pedestrian. So they would wash feet, or they would pour perfume to take an odor away and to make the house, scented really well. But what this woman did was she didn't do what was custom. She went beyond what was normal. She went beyond what would be expected of her. It was something so outrageous and so extravagant that she broke the custom. It wasn't. Let me pause here and say it this way. If this is what the average is, I'm not really sure, but let's just think about this for a moment. Let's say the average in Louisiana or even Lafayette, the average yearly salary is $30,000. Yearly salary that you make, the average person will make $30,000 a year. I'll show you scripturally how important that number is. Because this would be like this woman taking a bottle that was worth $30,000 and pouring it on Jesus. Think, okay, let's get crazier. Maybe we don't understand that. This would be like coming on December 2nd for that offering and giving your yearly salary. Think of that for a second. So if you're here and you make $40,000 or $30,000, can you imagine walking down when we all do this on December 2nd for the legacy offering and putting in $30,000, a yearly salary, everything that you've made? Why, Pastor Tim, why are you using that? Because that's how much this perfume was worth. See, Mark 14 tells you the price of the perfume. Listen to how the disciples say. But some were indignantly remarking to one another, why has this perfume been wasted? There's the word again. For this perfume might have been sold, here it is, for over 300 denarii. Now that doesn't mean much to us, but what that actually equals is 1 year wage for the common person. 1 year wage. That what this woman did was, she didn't just give, she didn't just put that in there. What she actually did was, she gave something that was extravagant. Why does it have to be the whole thing? Why does it have to be all of it? Like this perfume was gotten from the Himalaya mountains in Asia. It was brought in. Why all of it? Why couldn't you go to CVS and get like Brut? I mean, no offense, or Dracar, or Jovan. Why couldn't they do something like that? This the cheap perfume. He's not a cheap guy, but why not that? Why does it have to be the Himalaya, the mountains? Why does it have to be that she has to break it open? Why does it have to be that she poured it all out? Let me tell you what I was challenged with and I was convicted with today. And as I was reading through this, is that I am so used to giving good enough, but I don't know and understand what it means to give with nothing left. I don't understand that. I don't get that. I've been around people that have given everything, and it challenges me. I'm not condemned. I'm challenged by it. There's a big difference. Religious people, let me just say this is important. When you're around religious people, that's a bad thing. Religious people, they'll condemn you for not doing and being like they are. When you're around godly people, they'll challenge you to be like Jesus. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between godly and religious. When I'm around godly people that give everything, my life's challenged. I'm looking at this woman's gift and I'm going, man, I feel like I can do the custom. I feel like I can do, pour a little on it, keep some back. I can feel like I can go like, what are you giving for legacy? And what are you doing for legacy? And how are you doing? It's easy for me to look at people and go, okay, they're worshiping like this, but never really asking, what is giving it all with nothing left for me? Because I don't think it's just financial. I don't think it's just financially. I think it's in every aspect of our life. Let me explain it like this. Because I think I've seen it a few times in my life. Not only people that have sacrificed everything, but I saw it. I saw it in worship. When Brittany was singing that final song right before we took communion, when they get to that bridge of that song that says this, to the one that has saved my soul, to the one that has welcomed me home. That's emotional to me. I don't know what it is. It's just like I'm going, thank you for saving me. Thank you for welcoming me home. I didn't come in as a stranger, but you welcomed me as a son. And something about it that I just want to lift my hands. And I remember some years ago in Detroit watching a giving it all with nothing left worship. It's one of the first times I've ever seen this. There's a woman that used to come to our church, and the doctor told her, you only have a few months left, only a few months left. The disease that you have is killing your body, and you don't have much time. And her only request was that every Sunday she wanted to be brought to church. And this woman literally would pay the money to get a special van with a lift on it. She'd come, they'd put her wheelchair in the back, oxygen tanks strapped on, extra oxygen tanks, tubes up her nose. I mean, this woman had no more strength left, could not do anything else. And we hit a moment of our worship service. We hit a moment where it was kind of that Britney moment. To the one, it wasn't that song, but it was some song. To the one who has saved my soul, to the one who has welcomed me home. And I'll never forget what happened next. This woman that has enough strength in her legs to stand up, barely has enough strength to move her head. But that woman had one spot in her body that she had strength, and that was her hand. And she could move that wheelchair. And I remember in the middle of a song, I remember her taking that thumb and clicking that button, and I watched down a center aisle a wheelchair come all the way down. And while the music was hitting its apex, then she took that thumb and she hit a hard right, and bam, and that wheelchair was turning circles as she began to worship. She couldn't lift her hands, but she could put her thumb to the right. And I watched a woman that, listen, all she had left was this. And all I thought to myself, I sit in church singing songs. Sometimes I'm like this, sometimes I'm like this. I've got my hands working. I've got my arms. I've got my legs. And God is worthy of all of me with nothing left inside of me. He deserves it all. That's why my prayer is this from the 1960s martyr, Jim Elliot prayed this prayer, who died for his faith. He said, Father, forgive me for being so ordinary while claiming to know an extraordinary God. Forgive me for ordinary worship. Forgive me for thinking about an ordinary gift on December 2nd. Forgive me for singing amazing songs to an extraordinary God, but sitting there like an ordinary person when you saved my soul, when you welcomed me home, and you have died in my place. Thank you for being an extraordinary God. Let me close with this and be done. Number 3, I think that Jesus saw that she wasn't hindered like the others by calculations. She was motivated by love. She wasn't hindered by that. And I'll explain. Remember, they calculated 300 denarii. They knew the price. She wasn't hindered by calculation. She was avoiding being number 56, because I don't want to be number 56. I don't want you. I'll explain what number 56 is in a second. I'll tell you what that means. See, and I think this is important to remember. The enemy of extravagant love are those that calculate if it's worth it. They compute before they commit. Now, let me explain, because I want to help you. If you're wondering if you should marry someone, if in your wondering, it goes like this. Man, can I hang out with my friends anymore? Can I still play golf on Saturday? Soon as you start computing, that's not the one to marry. Soon as you go, she got debt. Man. And she has access to my saving, that's not the one. Don't marry that person. Because let me just tell you something. Love doesn't compute that kind of stuff. Let me tell you, when I married Cindy, she had 2 things in her life that I really didn't care about. Some of you going like, what? Okay, she had a dog, which I could care less about. Ugly as all get out. But let me just say something. And she had season tickets to the Detroit Red Wings, which was hockey. I could care less about hockey. I didn't even know anything about hockey. So I was just going like, but I was so in love with Cynthia, I'm going like, ooh, I love dogs. Ooh, poochie poochie. And then all of a sudden, NHL, boom. And I would look at her going like, what's icing again? What is icing? What is icing? I don't know what any of that stuff. But you know what it was? If I'm in love with her, those other things don't even matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. So here's what's crazy. It happened in Amesbury, Massachusetts. It was at the Heavenly Donut shop. And Eileen Taylor tells her story. And she said her and her family was going through a hard time. She'd been laid off. But it was one of those moments, one of those Saturdays, she had a little bit of surplus left. So she goes, I'm going to treat the family to some donuts. So she wanted to buy a dozen donuts for her family. And literally, for her, it was a stretch financially. So she went ahead, went through the drive-thru, ordered her dozen donuts, and when she got up to the window, she came up and the cashier looked at her and said, it's already been paid for. You don't have to worry about that. Car in front of you that just took off, he paid for your donuts. She goes, are you serious? This is amazing. And all of a sudden, she realized what was just starting. It was people that were blessing the person behind them. So she goes, I know I'm not supposed to do this because we probably don't have the money, but I want to pay for the person behind me. And all of a sudden she paid for the person behind her. And then it kept going so long that the news picked it up and the national news. It went for 55 cars, people paying for each other. I am so negative. You know what I thought was this? Who was number 56? Because I want to talk to that man. I want to go like, bro, really? Because what did you say at the window? Just give me mine. Heavenly Donuts, they said people were paying for the people behind them. They would order some of them just a coffee, and people behind them had like $30, like 4 and 5 dozen donuts, and they said, we got it covered. But who was 56 that messed the whole thing up? Who is the person? Because here's what I want you to know and how important this is. Who stopped that act of generosity? Because you know what? This is important. December 2nd is about the people behind you in line, and it's not about you on December 2nd. It's not about you going like, what do I get out of this? That's not what it's about. It's about your children, your grandchildren, and there's a whole bunch of people that need to get born again in New Iberia and in Youngsville. And on December 2nd, we're going to make $2 million happen in this place. I believe that. But here's what's crazy. Think about this. Her story inspired all of us today. This woman who breaks open a year's wage of perfume that many believe was an inheritance that she received and said belongs to the Lord, belongs to Jesus. And as it inspired us, there was one person that it didn't inspire. Because I didn't read to you the whole story, because number 56 comes right after her. We only read up to a certain point. But number 56 shows up right after we finish her story, and Jesus says, she did this for me. We'll preach about her in generations to come. The next verse says this in Matthew 26. Then Judas Iscariot, the 12 apostles, went to the chief priests. This is the same story. And asked, how much will you pay me to get Jesus into your hands? And they said, we will give you 30 silver coins, which ends up in today's street value, $15. Think of this. One woman says, let me take a year's wage. It goes to Jesus. And another person is going, what do I get out of this thing? That's why I'm just going to tell you, folks, how important this is. Putting those two things right next to each other. You know what that reminds me of? One person giving it all, another person trying to get what he can. I think Calvin Coolidge, one of our lay presidents, said it best. He says, no person was ever honored for what he received. They were always honored for what they gave. This is so important to understand. See, here's the part. In that room, there were 12 guys doing a price check on this gift. 12 guys are doing a price check. Took out their little price guns and just go, 300 denarii perfume, wasted. And all of a sudden, I'm just telling you, the price gun didn't work that day. because they misinterpreted that far off. Jesus saying it's a good thing, them saying it's a waste. How can you be that far off? Pastor Tim, can we be that far off? Let me explain it to you like this. I am so excited today for Growth Track Step 1 and the new Growth Track. I get to do it. I get to speak it again. I've been off from teaching Growth Track for like a year and a half, and like every time I'd walk out and going like, man, I gotta go home. And so I'd leave it and think to myself, man, what a joy it is. And this brand new Growth Track that you have an opportunity. And it goes something like this, because there are people that are here today that I'm trying to tell you that if you just stayed right after service today, 12:45, we're going to be done here in the next 5 minutes. We're going to be done and out, and then you wait 5 minutes. You leave your children in OSC Kids. We'll feed them. We'll feed you, and then I get to teach you for the next 35 or so minutes. Just about an hour commitment for 4 Sundays. 1 hour commitment for 4 straight Sundays. That's it. That's it. Here's what's crazy. There's some people that will sit there and go and like, I just thought we were coming to church. You want me to stay an hour longer? Ooh, number 56. Some of you are like, now we gotta stay. Let me tell you, because what you determined as, we're wasting our Sunday afternoon, and some of you going, that's your price check. My price check says, Bible, this is the four-step journey. You may be thinking we're wasting. What we're doing is we're discovering our purpose. That's what we're getting ready to do. That's why when we tell you to join a small group, I've listened to it. What do they want you to do? A night a week? How many nights do you have open? I only have one. And what do? I join a small group. You waste your only free night. Second step says, I'm finding freedom in the context of relationships. That's why I'm joining a small group. See, you could be that far off. You could be that far off. With a 4-step journey we're trying to take you on. Well, in just a moment, we want to take you on a journey to go we're challenging you in 2019 to go on a missions trip. How many weeks of vacation you have every year? I got 2 weeks. And you're going to use a week in the Dominican Republic? You're going to waste a week? I'm about to make a difference. You can define this any way you want to, and you can be that far off. And probably the one that's the most important that we could be so far off as we close is literally this. Think about it. When you ask the question, we want people every single Sunday on the 4-step journey, we'll always ask people this. We want them to know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and to make a difference. Today, you can stay for Growth Track. We want you to join a small group. But let me tell you the most important one, and that's to know God. Because we don't want you just to get ready for December 2nd. We just don't want you to be great for your life. We want you to be ready for eternity. And this is the part I want you to think about for a second. Can we be that far off, saying an hour for 4 weeks of Growth Track is a waste? Can you actually say giving a night a week for 3 semesters for small group is a waste? Can we actually say that? But here's what I've watched. If we want people to know God for eternity, I've watched people misinterpret that and be so far off. Because what if I ask you the question, how do you get to heaven? What are the directions to heaven? I'm a Protestant. I'm a Catholic. I'm a good person. I go to church. That's what I hear all the time. I go to church. I haven't hurt anybody. I didn't kill anyone. Thank you. And let's not start. I've been baptized. I've had communion. I was confirmed. I've been dedicated. Those are admirable things, but that's never what Jesus said. Can we be that far off that we've sat in church all of our lives and missed the actual directions on getting to heaven? Can we be that far off? Can you actually be saying here, I'm going to heaven because I'm a Protestant? I'm a Methodist, I'm a Baptist. I mean, can you be sitting here and going, I'm UPC, we're doing, I'm JW, or I'm a Cal. Can you actually be saying that you're going to heaven for that? Because you have a title, because you've taken a label? Then what you've just done is, you've just said that Jesus wasted his time coming 2,000 years ago. Because Jesus said, not you, not OSC, Jesus said, because he doesn't want us to be this far off, John 3:3, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. No one can see the kingdom of God without being born again. Can we be that far off that you think you're going to heaven because you're good? Can you be that far off that you think you're going to heaven because you haven't heard anyone, because you've been in church? Do you think that you could be that far off that you can actually say here today, I'm going to heaven because I go to church? Jesus didn't die on the cross to get you in church. Jesus died on the cross to get you to heaven. That's why he died on the cross. And today, I want you to go to heaven. How does that happen, Pastor Tim? Jesus said you need a second birth. Just like you were born the first time, you need to be born a second time. How does the second birth happen? It's as simple as ABC. A, I admit I'm a sinner. I'm inside. There is a sinful nature that I can't fix with a priest, a pastor, a promise, or a program. I can only fix it. Only Jesus can fix it. Salvation happens from the inside out. It's not me getting all cleaned up and coming to God. That's not what salvation is. And B, believing that Jesus died in my place. Sally talked about this with the communion. Jesus died in my place. It was supposed to be me that died. And Jesus goes, no. I'm going to die in their place. And then at C, confessing him as Lord. I want everyone here just to bow your head and close your eyes. We're going to close here in the next 2 minutes. If you're here today and you go, man, I was far off. I really messed that up. Because when you ask me, how do I get to heaven? I thought I go to church, or I'm a good person. You're far off. Jesus says, it's not church people that go. It's not good people that go. It's born again people that go to heaven. That's what Jesus said. That's what Jesus said. And if you're here today and say, oh my goodness, Pastor Tim, I was really off on the directions. But today, I want this to be my second birth date. I want to be born again today. How does that happen? I'm just simply going to pray a prayer. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to pray a born again prayer. And with every head bowed and every eye closed, if you're here today and say, Pastor Tim, I got it. I know the directions now. I want to be part of that prayer. When you pray that born again prayer, I want today to be my born again date. I want today to be it. So what do I have to do, Pastor Tim? I'm not going to make you stand. I'm not going to make you walk forward. But if you're here, even watching online right now, across America and across the world and right here in Acadiana, if you're here right now, present or watching live, and you go, Pastor Tim, when you pray that born again prayer, I want to be part of that. I'm just going to ask you to do one thing without any hesitation. You say, put me in that prayer. I want you right now, without any hesitation, hold up your hand as high as you can. Hold it up high, because I want to make sure I see every hand. And I'm going to count them from my right and move down. Keep them up high. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Keep them up. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Keep them up. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. That's fantastic. You can put your hands down today. That's awesome. Hey, let's do this together. If you're watching online, you can pray this with us. Let's all say this out loud. Dear Lord Jesus, I believe you're the Son of God. I believe that on the cross, you took my sin, my shame, and my guilt, and you died for it. You faced hell for me so I wouldn't have to go. You rose from the dead to give me a place in heaven, a purpose on earth, and a relationship with your Father. Today, Lord Jesus, I turn from my sin to be born again. God is my Father. Jesus is my Savior. The Holy Spirit is my helper. And heaven is my home. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen.